computer as well. So happy, beautiful, amazing day. Dr. Bob Rakowski out of Houston, Texas, and Pete Cohen, epic Cohenetic author, speaker, life coach, who's helped people through some very, very serious issues, including depression and anxiety, having a fun discussion about how we can improve our wonderful life by improving our mental state. So Pete, you often ask me to introduce myself. I'm going to ask you. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Well, first off, thank you very much. I think what I'm going to do is just going to, I think I need to put some, is there any feedback there? Can you guys hear?
Pete, I've got you loud and clear with no feedback.
Okay, great. Okay.
And Anne says, hello, Pete. So
thank you so much. Yeah, so it's we're live on Zoom and we're live on Instagram as well. So yeah, so my background was in fitness. I was a personal trainer for many years, and then I went back to university. I studied sports psychology, and I've just worked in the field of development. I'm known really now as the people's coach. I'm fascinated by people and the possibilities that exist for all of us to kind of close those gaps between where they are, where they want to be. I'm always looking to people to learn from. And you know what, if you can find the right mentors and the right people to learn from, all you got to do is follow their lead. And I've been following Dr. Bob's lead for 12 years, but actually, as some of you know, I knew his reputation before I'd actually met him, because when I was in the fitness industry, I was pretty well established, and I was asked to speak at some of the big global conferences, and Dr. Bob's name was mentioned numerous occasions. So who would have believed maybe 6-7 years on from that I would meet him in the most dire of circumstances when my wife wasn't given very long to live. And I couldn't believe how kind and how friendly he was. And I believe his advice is one major reason why my life is so good, but why my wife is alive and well today. So tonight we're going to be talking about holistic ways to combat depression and anxiety. And if you have questions, feel free to just ask the questions, because we're only here for one reason. We are genuinely here because we want to help. So, Dr. Bob, I was looking at some statistics, and is there any surprise to you that in Kelly McGonigal's book, she talks about how 97.3% of Americans are unhealthy by 4 basic measures. She says 50% of Americans are diagnosed with a chronic illness, 68% of Americans are obese, 70% of Americans are on prescription medication, and by the time you're 60 years old, you'll be on 5 prescription medications. 80% of Americans are mentally and emotionally challenged. Basically, they're not flourishing. When you hear those statistics, I'm just really curious, what does that make you think? What do you think about all of that?
Well, Pete, it was before 2020, and I actually think it's an understatement, but let's go to some really cutting edge research. I really like Dr. Daniel Amen, and he's got a TED Talk, and his TED Talk was entitled What I Learned After 83,000 Brain Scans. And he learned some very, very important things, but mental health and brain health are the same thing. They're one and the same. They're so tightly related. And what I've taught people for years is the brain is the most nutrient dependent, energy dependent, stress vulnerable, toxin vulnerable system in our bodies. And if we optimize those things and then connect with a purpose in life, we've got great steps towards being who we want to be and having what we want to have. Pete, somehow there we go.
You got me. In your work, so I remember when we were in Houston and my wife had a brain tumor and we came to your clinic, I never forget walking in and seeing this massive rhinoceros. Don't worry, it wasn't a real rhinoceros, but it looked like it was life-size.
Pete, it's a real rhinoceros. It's a mount. It's an actual mount of a real rhinoceros.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It is, yes.
So, okay, so one question, why? But the real question, I could see, your Hall of Fame with all of these athletes that you have worked with, from people like Tyson Gay, who's beaten Usain Bolt, to Evander Holyfield, to Yao Ming, all of these top athletes. But also, I think you should have pictures on the wall of all of the people that you've been. There should be a picture of my wife on the wall, because these are the real champions, I think, of the people who overcome the odds. And in terms of depression, how big a problem do you think this actually is? Because we were talking about this yesterday. We were talking about the over-medication of it, and people treating unhappiness as a form of depression. What, in your mind, what is the label of depression? What does it actually mean?
Well, Pete, they're not experiencing the joy that they want to experience, just very, very simply. Now, is there a biochemical component? Sure. Is there a lot more of a lifestyle component? I believe way more. But Pete, I just looked at a source called Mental Health America, and here's what it said. Basically, since the pandemic, there are the highest levels of anxiety and depression ever measured. And here's what it says. It's fueled by loneliness and isolation. And there are alarming numbers. This is what the article says, alarming numbers of children reporting thoughts of suicide and self-harm. So you start looking at that and you go, well, what the heck is going on here? I thought we were supposed to protect our children, and we should, shouldn't we? But when you look at that, you come to realize that there's a lot of things that are at stake, and there are people making decisions that are just not in people's best interest. So, if someone can't, one of the definitions of depression, it's an inability to construct a future. And I'm very sad to say that the first pandemic death that I heard of was a suicide. And the amount of suicides that I know of compared to the amount of actual viral deaths is way higher. And last year was a record year. I don't know why you want to keep records on that, for suicide in the US. There's actually and we don't need to take this too big a tangent, but Scott Atlas out of Stanford says that the deaths related to policy, the loss of life years, 25x the loss of life years due to policy than from the actual virus. And by the way, the people that died from the virus, 80 years old on their way out. People that died from the policies, sometimes very young, tragically young.
Well, the challenge with a conversation like this is that we could actually go down so many different roads. And we do want to look at holistic strategies for depression and anxiety. What do you think is the difference between depression and anxiety? I love the way you explain these two different emotional states.
Well, they certainly can blend one another. When you look at depression, it's really a lack of pick-me-up neurotransmitters. I tell people, we've got pick-me-up neurotransmitters, we've got calm-me-down neurotransmitters, and the imbalance in depression is not enough of the pick-me-ups, and anxiety is just playing too much. And so when the body gets in fight or flight, the brain gets in fight or flight, and if you have anxiety long enough, you'll burn things out and you'll ultimately become depressed. And they said that anxiety tends to be the most common imbalance in the brain. And there's a lot of people that experience it a lot more often. Sad is not the same as depressed. I mean, if you're depressed, it's over an extended period of time. And there's actually alterations in your brain signaling that keeps you pretty stuck. And it's suggested that can be a big hole to try to dig your way out of.
Look, we all know the power of having a conversation. The way it works in the UK, I mean, you're familiar with our sick care system. If you're unwell and you go to the doctor doesn't have much time, and it's more than likely he's going to prescribe you something. And it's very easy to prescribe a medication to mask something that someone is experiencing. And often, from my observation, people are feeling depressed because of the way that they're thinking and a lack of hope. Like you said, but there's a couple of elements I want to talk to you about, but I think it is quite challenging for people to take responsibility. I think a lot of people are still looking for the medication or looking for someone to give them the answer or to tell them they have a particular condition. But let's just go back to the whole thing around exercise. So again, this is something that Kelly McGonigal talks about in The Joy of Movement. It's a fantastic book. She talks about scientists have discovered a threshold that if you do lower than a certain amount of steps every single day, you are more prone to depression and anxiety. And the average or that amount is 5,649. So if you do less than 5,649 steps, I mean, how it's been worked out to that number, I don't know. But the research is in the book. She cites the studies that were done, but the average, the global average is 4,961. So is it any surprise that people are suffering and struggling if they're not doing enough steps? But let me ask you maybe the obvious question. What is it about movement that can really combat stress and anxiety?
Well, let's go with movement, because life is motion. When motion stops, life stops, at every single level. And when you move, you begin to circulate a lot of things. You're going to nourish the cells more. You're going to detoxify the cells more efficiently. If you move enough with enough intensity, you get an instant release of feel-good neurotransmitters. They might call it runner's high or some type of exercise high that can be really, really powerful. But use it or lose it. As you move more, you become better at moving more. And by the way, you probably crave moving more. And as you begin to lose it, you lose your ability to do it. And that's probably as a spiral downward. So we want to keep people active. But it's no mystery that a lot of activity has been engineered out of our daily lives. People can shop online. You used to have to go into a store and sometimes walk a distance. People sometimes even buy their groceries online. It's very, very fascinating. And we're going to encourage people to learn to move in a way that you enjoy. And, I recall when you and I taught a lecture at a cancer charity in Houston, and the woman that brought step aerobics to the UK was talking about fitness. And she said, most people are about as fit as they need to be to enjoy doing the things that they enjoy doing in life. So people like dancing, if they like sport, if they like walking or hiking, they're going to be more active because they'll go ahead and do that. So we want to find ways that people can really enjoy moving their bodies in a way that keeps them healthy.
So, with this whole subject about depression and anxiety, we'll look at this from a nutritional point of view. So we've obviously just looked a little bit at the physiological. Life is motion, as you say. When you move, what a lot of people don't realize is that when you move, your brain actually rewards your body. You might not feel like exercising, and that's not surprising because, again, we're not designed to exercise for no reason. We're only designed to exercise because we have to run away or because we need to eat. So it's no surprising. We're almost fighting against some of our instincts. But what people don't realize is your brain wants this thing to move. This brain wants things. And what I have found over the last few years specifically, that one of the biggest reasons people are depressed and anxious and sad and experiencing a whole array of negative emotions is because they are not growing. They are not evolving. They're kind of stuck in that world of being comfortable. And I know it's challenging to get out of that space. And I'd like to look at this just from a psychological point of view, and I'd love your opinion about this before we look at it from a nutritional point of view. Because what you and I are massive fans of personal development. You probably read just as much as I do, and you love to learn, you love to understand. And that's one of the things I love about you. But it's our view of the future that I find so fascinating. And the research, you and I have come across that research that talks about people in the fMRI machines. They wire the brains up. They ask them questions. They say, hey, think of yourself. They see a part of the brain light up. Think of a stranger. Another part of the brain lights up. Then think of yourself in the future, like 6 months or a year. People don't associate themselves they don't see themselves that part. They see themselves today. And with Hannah, when she was diagnosed and 3 years after she made the recovery, and I asked her that question that my coach had asked 3 years ago, what are you going to do when you get better? She cried. And I realize now, because she wasn't thinking too far ahead. If you've been given a diagnosis, why the hell would you want to think too far ahead? Yet, is it not our ability to think further ahead into the future, to see who we're actually capable of becoming? Because if we don't have empathy for that person, we're just going to keep on repeating. And it's not a surprise. And I know this is easy to say. These are just words. But I would love to hear from you, because you're one of the most positive people I've ever met in my life. And I want to know, who are you committed to become? What inspires you? You haven't got time to be depressed, right? I mean, you're too excited about what you're doing.
Oh yeah, I guess depression is for people that aren't on purpose. And I'm going to give you a lot of credit for getting me to really sit down and think about it. You defined what you're all about. I'm all things health, happiness, and success in that order. And we both know that people take their health for granted until they lose it. But I'm a big fan of Stephen Covey's work, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. The first habit of effective people is they're proactive. And I want to be proactive mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, socially, financially, impactfully. So I create goals and daily methods of operation for every single one of those areas in my life. And we can break it into 7s. I do eat right, drink right, think right, move right, sleep right, poop right, talk right. How often? Pretty much every single day. Now, do I indulge now and then? Yeah, but I always tell people you have to earn your indulgence. Understand, if you eat 500 extra calories, you're going to have to exercise hard for a long time to burn up those 500 calories. And I'm willing to do that. So, if people really knew the trade-offs that they were making, one, you say, am I willing to put in, you'd have to run 5 miles to burn 500 calories. So are you willing to do that? If you are, hey, indulge. If you're not, well, then maybe take it a little easier on dessert. Life is worth living. We can have some latitude. And in fact, the healthier we are, the more balanced we are, the more successful we are, the more latitude we have. So it is a feed forward phenomenon. The better it gets, the better it gets.
It's so true. It is so true. So let me ask you a couple more things, and we can take some questions on this as well. Eric, did you just unmute yourself, or was I just dreaming?
No, Pete, I'm an innocent party here. It wasn't me. Fingers off the trigger.
Okay, no worries. Well, we good to hear from you as well. So when I came to see you, Dr. Bob, with my wife, and I know some of you have heard this story before, but I think it's just one of the most powerful stories. You did some tests on my wife, right? And then you sat us down and you said to me and my wife, you said, how does a tornado start? And I'm thinking, what? Why are you asking me this question? Then you said, how does a hurricane start? As if I would know the difference. And again, I was like off with the fairies thinking, okay, this is strange. And you said, look, these things start because the conditions are right. Cancer starts because the condition, even if you're predisposed to the condition, still the conditions have to be right. Do you believe that the conditions still have to be right for depression and anxiety for these things to occur?
Pete, all the conditions have to be right for everything. We just lost Bob Proctor. And one of his great teachings were that this universe is run by universal laws. Now, most people can't repeat them. They don't know what they are. And if they don't know what they are, how can they work with them? But what he said very, very simply is look around you, look at the results you're getting. This is a universe of cause and effect. If you look around with what you've got and you're very happy with it, well, you're on a good path. If you're not, it's time to get some changes. And he was a big fan of getting some coaching, understanding, one, who you are. And here's what he said. We're a fraction of source energy, a piece of God, essentially. We're all God's children, if I can use that term. And that means we're connected to infinite. And you know what? If we partner with infinite, partner with God, hey, we're going to be a lot better off than if we don't, because then we have all the wisdom and all the energy and all the everything, which is there. And he dedicated the last 60 years of his life to sharing that message around the globe. And he did it. He created a goal in 1973 to have a company that operated all over the world. And he accomplished that in 2021. Every single country was utilizing his teaching. So how phenomenal is that? But conditions are everything, Pete. They really are. And we're responsible for them.
Well, since we're talking about Bob Proctor, I love what he said about ignorance. And that wasn't a word I was particularly, I thought it was a real negative word. But then when I really looked to understand what it means, it's just a lack of understanding. It's a lack of awareness. And we can't talk for everybody. We don't know everybody. But from my experience, people who are playing a bigger game, people who want to grow, people who want to contribute, they don't experience excessive amounts of anxiety and depression. Maybe they get down, everyone gets up and down, but when they know that there's something bigger out there for them to go and do, it just keeps them going. It keeps them excited and enthusiasm. That's what enthusiasm means, right? It means God within. But let's look at this from Eric, you definitely have unmuted yourself now. So.
Apologies, speed. Go ahead. I don't know how that happened.
That's okay. Don't worry. So let's talk a little bit about from a nutritional point of view. Look, I think most of us know that there's the standard American diet or the standard global diet in most places in the world is just terrible. It's just full of additives and sugar. And I'd love to hear, is it any wonder to you that the food that people are eating is causing depression and anxiety?
No, it absolutely is. And Pete, I do go through the published facts here. The experts are saying, and they said this in 2014, that we had 60 years of farming left before the soil was just too depleted to make anything of value. And so we look at the fertilizer that they've been using, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium at super high levels. But what I tell people is it takes 30 elements to make healthy plants, animals, and humans. And you don't have to be a math genius to realize that if you pull 30 out for every 3 you put back in, we're going to have a problem. And we're there. We're there with the problem with malnutrition causing depression. So Pete, on PubMed, I looked up nutrition and depression, 12,735 results. And wow. I might ask you, when people are going to a doctor with depression, how many of them are asking, what are you eating? And how well nourished are you? And tell me about your supplement program. No, they give them a drug which is going to alter their brain and statistically doesn't work much better than a placebo. So what the heck are we doing?
Well, there's a lot of history and a lot of politics behind all of this, but I think we live in a world, definitely here in the UK, and I'm sure it's the same in America, that if you're sick, you go to the doctor, he hasn't got a clue about how to make you well. They just know how to stop making you be sick. And I honestly believe that most people have forgotten what it's like to be healthy, to be well. I think most people think that the pain that they have in their body is just normal. And we've kind of bought into this hypnosis that when we get to a certain age, there's nothing you can do about it. If you have this condition, you're always going to have this condition. And that's really quite sad. But it doesn't have to be that way. And let's just move the conversation on in terms of all of the things that you have noticed in terms of nutrition. What is it, or what are some of the things that people can put in their body that can seriously change their mental and emotional state?
Well, how about everything? We could just start with water. So the brain is the most hydrated organ in the entire body, 77% water, even 1% level of dehydration. And that is insanely common. At least 90% of people that I see are at least 1% dehydrated. That's going to impact brain health and cognition. Then we look at good fats. The brain is made structural component of a fat called docosahexaenoic acid, horrifically low in the standard American diet, probably the European diet as well. And you start looking, and there was a study in the Lancet years ago that countries that ate the most cold water fish had the lowest amount of depression. We ought to know that if you make a better brain, it's going to work better. And then understand it's the most nutrient dependent. So you need all the fabulous 50, all the vitamins, minerals, amino acids, proteins, carbohydrates, fat, fiber, and water. And I like people to get a really good diet, an anti-inflammatory diet, a non-processed diet, an alkaline diet, a ketogenic diet, because blood sugar fluctuations are horrific on the brain and on the mood. And then we've got Ganoderma lucidum, which is all the fabulous 50 in one package, and a number of health studies for the brain where it helps to deliver the nutrition, clear the toxins, buffer the stress, and enhance the energy efficiency of this wonderful organ. And we've done full seminars on just that, webinars on it. It's powerful. And that change alone has been...
Sorry, go on. That change alone?
Well, that change alone has made a huge difference for a lot of people, and people that need a little more, well, we can guide them to that too.
I mean, I've heard you speak for days. I remember going to a 3-day seminar, and I just listened to everything that you were saying, because you are someone who is obsessed with science and research and fact. I remember you telling the story. Tell us the story of when you've been asked to be in court and what you said when you were put under oath.
Yeah, so 3 times I was an expert witness. All 3 times my cases won. The last time it was a big money case. And the attorney for our side was really, really good. And they're going to say, doctor, when you're on the witness stand, here's what they're going to ask you. Doctor, in your opinion, and they're going to ask you a question. And the way we want you to answer it every time is, I'd rather not give you my opinion. I'd rather give you a published medical fact. And, you know, I'm somewhere in the neighborhood of more than 20,000 PubMed citations in my personal database, many of which I remember, and nearly all of them I have indexed in a way that I can find. And that's how I went up prepared. All those things right then and there, knowing the type of questions they were going to ask, and say, well, I'd rather give you a published medical fact. And here's your published medical fact. And it absolutely destroyed their case. So we won, hands down.
So let's look at published medical facts about Ganoderma. So when I came to see you with my wife, you put her on a ketogenic diet, which I was really pleased that you did, because I actually remember studying about ketogenic diets in children with epilepsy. And I knew of ketogenic diets. I knew athletes were doing ketogenic. I knew people that wanted to lose weight. But I knew it wasn't an easy diet for many people to follow because of obviously the addictive nature of so many of the other foods that are in our diet. But why did you ask her to consume Ganoderma? Because I know that you said to her, if you drink tea or coffee, drink this tea or coffee. Why did you say that to her?
Well, Pete, I have been using Ganoderma in clinical practice for all 30 years. And, you know, my number one key to success is from listening to successful people. So when I was in school, you know, I literally called my chiropractor back in the state of Wisconsin. I said, look, I want to be good. I want to be really good. How do I get to be really good? It's just that simple. You just learn from people who are really good. I said, okay, where do I find those? He says, not in school. Believe it or not, you know, it's very rare for someone with talent for helping people is actually teaching in the university. There's rare exceptions, but generally they're not there. So find out who's a great chiropractor, call them, you know, offer to add value to their life in some way if they will allow you to observe for an hour or two. So I observed hundreds of successful doctors, and there was a lot of things they had in common, but one of them gifted me a book, and the title was Reishi, the King of Herbs. That was the book he gifted me. He said, look, this is the best thing I've ever found in clinical practice. You know, if you want to help people, get as many people on this as you possibly can. So I started using it in clinical practice right away. And I used a tincture that didn't taste good, but it went down pretty easy. Then when I was introduced to Ganoderma in coffee and tea, I was very skeptical because it's a very bitter herb. And when I realized that this coffee was really good and the tea was really good, well, it made sense. People drink coffee and tea every day. They never need to be reminded. They never plan to quit. So when I took a good history on Hannah, I realized, okay, she drinks coffee. If you drink coffee, drink this coffee. Regular coffee is acidic. That's part of the perfect storm of cancer. And then later on, I unwound it to the point where you realize low oxygen, low nutrients, high acid, chronic inflammation, immune suppression, secondary to chronic distress. The perfect storm is completely unwound by Ganoderma lucidum. And long since then, 2019, they came out on a study that Ganoderma's proven against glioblastoma, the most aggressive brain cancer. So, you know, I typed in Ganoderma on PubMed, 2,957 citations. And you start looking at that and you come to realize, well, and by the way, look at how these have gone up over the last years. 2020, 286.
Yeah, we know, and we know why that is. So for those of you that are watching here on Instagram, we're also live on Zoom, and Dr. Bob has PubMed up, which is the biggest medical database in the world. And as you can see, that over the last, 15, 20 years, there's been so many more studies on this. And the reason for that, you know, again, we don't need to go down this road, but let's just mention it, is because the pharmaceutical industries are looking to make the next blockbuster drugs that they can make for pennies and sell and make millions. And nature is just so powerful. And, you know, I didn't know anything about mushrooms, but what's really interesting, apart from magic mushrooms and the mushrooms that, you know, you eat when you have a meal, I didn't know anything about adaptogens. I didn't know anything about that. And then when I did my research, I was literally blown away, absolutely blown away to see that this is so revered in certain parts of the world that if you're caught with this thousands of years ago, you're not in the Chinese royal family. They will cut your arm off first time. second time they'll cut your head off. And I have never seen anyone, I've never seen anything that a human being could put in their body and incredible things happen. For me, Dr. Bob, as you know, 12 years of consuming it every single day. I've had 2 colds. One of them lasted 2 days. I feel so calm. Can you explain why? Because we're talking about depression and anxiety. And I know a lot of people that consume Ganoderma in the tea and coffee that we promote. Why? How does that happen? How does it have that effect that it could be? Because coffee is a stimulant. How can it have this effect where people have this calm focus?
Well, the beautiful thing is that the components of Ganoderma promote that. They improve brain circulation. They increase nitric oxide. They dilate the blood vessels. And that specific calmness, it's a facilitator of GABA, which is profoundly calming to the brain. But there's also serotonin, dopamine. Those are super happy chemicals, and acetylcholine. And acetylcholine is a neurotransmitter of memory. So it's anti-Parkinson's, anti-Alzheimer's, anti-aging, pro-immunity. Pete, one tangent that we that we didn't get into, and I'm just going to share a screen, stop sharing and bring that back, because you had asked me about psychoneuroimmunology the other day. And I looked up how many PubMed studies do we have on psychoneuroimmunology, and absolute knowing that the brain and the immune system are so tightly related. Hope I share the right screen there. Wrong one.
I hope you guys are enjoying this. Those of you that are watching this on Instagram, make sure you follow Dr. Bob. Dr. Bob is the most incredible functional medicine doctor and authority on health and well-being, and you seriously want this guy in your corner. Yeah, we'll take some questions.
All right,
in a few moments.
Pete, well, I want to go into this tangent for a moment, because the field of psychoneuroimmunology has been around for 77 years at this point in time, and they realized that the same factors that control the central nervous system control the immune system. And when you start looking at and realize that the immune system is a circulating nervous system, that's what it is. Things that are good for the immune system are good for the brain. Things that are good for the brain are good for the immune system. Things that are bad for the immune system are bad for the brain, and vice versa. So it all works so wonderfully together. And sometimes when you look at the angle from the immune system, there was nutrition in the brain, 12,000 studies, nutrition in the immune system, 33,000 studies. Then you build the bridge to, psychoneuroimmunology. They're basically the same. Somewhere you blend those two. There's probably 40,000 studies that show that nutrition is critical for the brain and the immune system. And it's a big part of what we need to do. Malnutrition, top cause of death on the planet, many years running, according to the Global Nutrition Report. So very powerful.
It obviously all starts off with a decision, right? This is the decision to take responsibility for your health and well-being. And I know that's not easy. For years, Martin Seligman, for those of you that know him, if you don't know him, he's like the forefather of modern popular psychology. For years, they were looking at how satisfied people were in life, how happy they were. And their research showed that people were becoming increasingly unhappy. So they basically scrapped all that, looking at that, and they looked at what really makes a fulfilled person, the field of well-being, of a human being who's flourishing. And people who are wise, people who don't give in to temptation. And these are the challenges, I think. It takes courage to stand up and say, you know what, I want to change my life. It takes wisdom to learn from experience, but it is probably the greatest thing. And that's one of the questions I would love to ask everybody here. What will be your greatest ever achievement? With everything that's going on in your life right now, what will it be? Not what has it been, what will it be? Will it not possibly be who you actually become? Look, we'll open this up, and we do this every Tuesday, guys, just so you know. Every Tuesday we do a different presentation around health and well-being. We're here because we want to inspire you to improve your health. And then every Saturday we do another presentation, which is more business related, because we also have a business around some of these products that we've been talking about. All of the products are infused with 100% organic Ganoderma or reishi. Dr. Bob, was there anything else? So just let me ask you one more thing and then we'll take some questions. If anyone's got any questions on Instagram, feel free to put your questions in there. Eric, if you want to help us with any questions that we have here on Zoom. Dr. Bob, can you explain about what happens with the two things, the adaptogen nature of Ganoderma and also how Ganoderma promotes the release of the hormone called GABA and what that has effect that has on the human body? Dr. Bob has frozen on me.
Pete, yeah, my biggest challenge at the moment is a dying battery on my.
Well, that's okay. We'll say goodbye to everyone.
I'm getting it. Well, I think I'm reconnecting, but let's see. Pause due to poor connection. That's unfortunate. All right, let me figure out. You know, I guess I need to say goodbye. Pete, are you still on Instagram? Can you let everybody know my? I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, I think. No worries. We're coming back. You're always coming back, guys. Thank you for watching on Instagram. If you want any help or any support, feel free to reach out to Dr. Bob or myself, whoever invited you. And let's keep it on Zoom. Yeah. Goodbye, everyone.
Yeah, it says pause due to poor connection. I have no idea what's going on with this, but
that's okay. So, Dr. Bob, I was asking you about the adaptogen nature of Ganoderma, and I was also asking you about how Ganoderma helps in the secretion of the hormone GABA and the impact that has on the nervous system.
Pete, I just ended Instagram, so I'm going to have you repeat that.
Good, no problem. For the third time, but it's all good. I was just asking you about the adaptogen type nature of Ganoderma, because this is medicinal mushrooms are a huge business now globally, worth billions. And there's this word called adaptogens. Let me ask you that question first. What does that actually mean?
Well, adaptogens are just like it basically says. It is something that helps the body to adapt at whatever is going on. And so the nice thing about Ganoderma as an adaptogen is, you know, it has all the fabulous 50. So it can nourish the body completely, whatever it needs in terms of nutrition. It's that powerful, top superfood on the planet, 430 unique molecules within it, 79 of which are powerful for the immune system and anti-infective. You know, it's proven in clinical studies, PubMed, to block replication of the HIV virus, H1N1. We don't want to be censored, so we won't name a virus, but it's been studied against that one too and found to be profoundly effective. In my own clinical practice, we have not had a single patient that's had a serious problem with that, including some couples in their 80s. And so, you know, God's pharmacy trumps man's pharmacy all day long. There's sometimes we like man's pharmacy. They've got some good tools, but they're way overutilized. And then Pete, you said something very fascinating. When you look at their education, it's not about health. They study hardly any nutrition at all. They don't study lifestyle. They study bugs and drugs. I'll tell a story and then we can go back to questions. But I was giving a lecture at one of the Texas medical schools in 1994. And I had an hour to lecture with them. And when I was, you know, my hour was up, an instructor came in the room, grabbed the microphone from me and he says, "You're through." You know, he didn't like what I had to say. And so the students followed me out in the hallway, and you know they had so many questions. I got another classroom, lectured for another hour. We got booted out of that classroom, went to a third. I ran out of time before they ran out of questions. And I'll never forget the question I asked them. I said, "Look, what is it about this topic that you find so fascinating?" And they said, "You're talking about health. We don't talk about that here." So what do you talk about? And they said, "Bugs and drugs." And that really is what the education's about. And by the way, could you spend, you know, a lifetime and a half studying bugs and drugs? Well, you could. A bunch of people have. But where's it getting us? You know, not very far.
Well, thank you so much for everything you've shared. If anyone has any questions, feel free to ask. We do appreciate, you know, you guys being here, and I really hope you will just realize how lucky we are to have Dr. Bob here sharing his wisdom with us. You know, this is also our business. We have been distributing these products. I mean, who would have believed that 3 years, a year and a half after my wife was given 18 months to live, I would meet Dr. Bob, follow his nutritional advice. My wife make a miraculous recovery. Dr. Bob called me when I was in London and asked me if I wanted to distribute these products. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't even drink tea or coffee, but I said yes. And that single decision has changed. How many people in this room here on this Zoom call, their life has been changed because I said yes? Just turn your camera on, or just say yes if you're one of the people in this room. Just take a moment to think about that. Just because of that one decision. And I have not stopped consuming these products. And I know many of you have every single day, and there's some amazing stories to tell. And even if the only thing you want to do is do your own research, if the only thing you want to do is you want to try for yourself our products and see what difference and impact that has on your health and your well-being, that's great as well. But you know what? If you're interested in business and you want to work with us, then this is something we would really encourage you to do. On Saturday, this is when we do a business presentation. Can you have business and health together? Well, guys, look at the pharmaceutical industry, but you might not say that's business and health. You could say that's sickness and wealth. But this is something that has made a huge difference to so many of our lives. I'm going to hand it over to Eric. I wondered if you had anything to say, if you've got any questions. We really appreciate all of you being here this evening. But Eric, over to you.
Awesome, Pete. A great job. Great to listen into this conversation. It's such an important conversation as well. But I just had a question for a friend, Dr. Bob, who is looking at reishi, has had some challenges with mental health, but did her own research. It's funny you just said that, Pete. This is a challenge that can come up if people do their own research. There's a lot of databases that people can search that are bought by pharmaceutical companies. You just have to look at the sponsors at the source of their website. But there's a number of websites that she listed that actually came back to say that it wouldn't be good for someone with blood pressure challenges. Could you just clarify how that's not accurate and actually how reishi helps to benefit anyone who may have challenges with blood pressure, please?
Well, it's certainly one of the most top cardiovascular herbs in the history of the game. And what I can do is a quick search on my computer and pull up a screenshot that you can take and share with her, where I list some of the top PubMeds where it shows that all of the potential risk factors for cardiovascular are positively modulated by Ganoderma. And it raises the good cholesterol, lowers the bad cholesterol. It lowers blood pressure by multiple mechanisms. It's a powerful anti-inflammatory, and that, of course, is one of the best benefits ever, because the inflammation is the primary risk factor for cardiovascular disease. I'll pull up the slide now. And when you start looking at this, different references for blood pressure are all there showing that Ganoderma lowers the blood pressure by 3 different mechanisms. There's other references on it enhancing nitric oxide, which increases circulation all over the body and can lower blood pressure. And then that anti-clotting reference there, Ganoderma prevents abnormal clotting without promoting abnormal bleeding. Now, the drugs are just one way. They prevent normal clotting and promote abnormal bleeding. And there's some of the most toxic drugs with the highest side effect risks, including death. You know, I had a patient that died from her anti-clotting drugs. She was in a cancer battle, and it was the standard of care to give them an anti-clotting agent. She went to church with her husband on a Sunday. By the way, we had her 2 years past her prognosis. When I first saw her, she was told she wouldn't live till Christmas, and that was on Thanksgiving. And she made it to Christmas, the next Christmas, the next Christmas, and then went to church with her husband on a Sunday, was getting out of her car and bumped her head on the roof of the car, told her husband, you know, I'm feeling tired. I'm going to go lay down and take a nap. Well, her brain bled out in her head and she died. And so, you know, these types of things happen all the time. I never looked up the death certificate, but they probably said she died of cancer. No, she died of a brain hemorrhage from the blood thinners, and how horrible. So, you know, if you go to PubMed, you can look it up. You can find all the great data. And I think people are going to take a really good hard look at their references there seems to be an all-out war on health. You know, there's certain things we can't say without being censored, so we're smart enough not to say it. And you have to realize that that's never a good state to be in, you know, when people can block the truth. So the truth shall set us free. We just have to find a way to share it.
Beautiful. Thank you for clarifying that, Dr. Bob. And of course, if anyone is looking at this and watching the replay, PubMed is the place to go, because you can go onto Google and find anything on Google. It's not necessarily going to be a reliable source. So certainly, thank you for clarifying that. And I look forward to sharing this with that friend of mine as well. But just in regards to the chat, Dr. Bob, have you got an appointment to go to, or do we have a couple of minutes?
I'll give a couple minutes, but I'm behind on my next one, but I'll do that.
Okay, I'll speak as quickly as possible. So Molly has a question. Hi, Dr. Bob. What diet, including Ganoderma lucem, would you recommend for a 12-year-old boy who has epilepsy?
Well, the ketogenic diet is known to be good for epilepsy. And Eric, I will send you, I actually sent a seizure protocol video to someone earlier today. I can find it on my YouTube channel. But I've had some phenomenal seizure cases, but I'll talk about a 5-year-old boy that had a brain trauma when he was very young. Mom brought to me at age 5. He was taking the most he could take of seizure medications, was still having seizures and had elevated liver enzymes. And so we needed to create a protocol that would work for him. You know, so we got him actually chewable fish oils and a chewable multivitamin, and Ganoderma spore capsules were easy to sprinkle on his food. You know, got him things that he would take to get his brain better. And within 6 months, he was off of medications, was seizure free, and we had normalized the liver enzymes along the process as well. So there's lots that can be done for young kids. And I'll find that video and I'll send it to you and you can forward it on.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Dr. Bob. I'll hand it back to you, Pete, if you want to wrap up the call. Next week on Tuesday, we're going to be discussing around what helps to nourish the body and get you into a better state of overall health. So looking forward to that call as well.
I'm thinking that Samina has a quick question. She's been waiting patiently with her hand raised. So Samina, do you want to ask?
Yeah, my question is the supplement Ganoderma, does it need to be taken with supervision?
No known toxicity, no known drug interaction. If people, you know, I tell people a 100-pound dog, they gave 4,000 doses a day for weeks on end without toxicity. So, you know, you probably wouldn't even have that much Ganoderma in stock. So no, there's no worry about it at all. Great question.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Simi, who invited you here this evening?
My brother-in-law did, because he's connected with somebody who follows you guys, and I'm in the well-being industry because I work with trauma, so he forwarded it to me. Yeah.
Do you know who your brother knows? Does he know?
Yeah, a guy who runs a restaurant, Benny Harner. So I don't know who that is.
Okay. Well, I'm sure we'll find a person to help you. So,
okay.
But feel free to reach out to any of us if we can help you. And no matter what. You're in the UK, I take it, yeah?
I'm in the UK, yeah. I'm a therapist here, yeah.
Whereabouts?
In London.
Whereabouts? North, south, east, west?
Oh, North London, Chingford.
Chingford, yeah. I'm from North London. But anyway, that's another story. Thank you for being here. Can we give Dr. Bob a big round of applause, please?
And Pete Cohen, a big round of applause. And all of you.
Always inspire. Thank you. Listen, you always inspire me. I was tired before I came on here, but now I'm like wide awake. So thank you so much, everyone that came here. We will be here on Saturday. If you want the link for Saturday, it's the same link. It's the same link for Saturday and for Tuesday, right? So the same time on Saturday, if you want to come along, we'd love to see you there every Tuesday. But for now, guys, we'll say goodbye and have a wonderful night, wonderful day.